When buying your first or next camera, people just get caught up on specs and specs alone. Can it shoot 4K? What are the colours like? What are the megapixels? And they just concentrate on that and that only. And I'm not saying they're not important factors, because obviously they are. It's the reason why I'm upgrading from my Canon EOS R, but it's not the only reason, and it's probably not one of the most important reasons either. And without taking this important factor seriously, you might really seriously regret it in the future. I made this mistake when buying my first camera, and it actually helped me make my decision and was probably the most important factor when I actually brought my Canon EOS R over the Sony a7 III. Even though the a7 III is by far the more superior camera in a lot of ways, especially in video, my first ever camera was the Fujifilm X-T30, and I absolutely loved it. The pictures were great, the video was great, but there was just one little annoying thing that was just slowly bugging me as time went on, and I just couldn't deal with it anymore, and that was just the size of it itself. It was too small, it didn't have a grip on it or anything, and I actually really wish I actually tested this camera out before purchasing it, because I actually do think it would have had a major impact on whether I would have brought that camera or not. So what I done, I sold up and I actually brought into Canon. But before I actually brought into Canon straight away, I actually did the one thing that I probably should have done when I actually first bought my Fuji camera, and that is actually to go to a store physically and actually physically hold these cameras in my hands. The second thing I done is actually to try and look past the specs. I know it's hard, I know people get caught up on the specs. Can it shoot 4K 60 uncropped? What's the megapixels like? What are the colours like? How many frames per second can it shoot? I know it's hard, and that's basically anyone really cares about at the minute, but I've got to admit I had to try and look past that, because when I went for the Canon EOS R, I knew that camera was not as superior as the a7 III, and I also knew there was no third-party lenses over Sony as well. But this deciding factor was way too important for me to actually go with the Sony cameras, because I have a feeling I would have done exactly the same as what I did with my Fuji, and that's sell up and move over to Canon anyway in the near future. But I wanted to go and actually feel the camera itself in my hands and how it actually felt when I was actually shooting with it. So I went to the camera store and I felt both of them, and straight away I did not like the feel of the Sony at all. I picked up the a7 III, I didn't really like the button placements, I didn't like the grip on it, I didn't really like the look of it on the back either. Everything about it just didn't feel right at all, even though the camera was a more superior camera than the EOS R is what I could only get at the time. Then I felt the Canon EOS R and it just felt right. It felt perfect, it felt so comfy, the grip was amazing, the feel of it in the hands, the button placements, the menus, everything about it was just so perfect for me, and that was the main reason why I actually went with Canon over Sony, and I'm not looking back. I've used my EOS R now throughout 2022 and the start of 2023, and I've lived with it. It's not been the best for video, it's got a major crop on 4K, and I've basically not touched 4K at all, or super slow-mo, because it's in 720p. I've managed to shoot real estate and wedding videos of it throughout this time. I've been on various photo shoots, and it's been amazing. It is time for an upgrade, and it's not very good in 2023 anymore, I've got to admit, and that's why I want to upgrade to the R6 Mark II. But if I didn't go with Canon at the time and make the sacrifice in specs, I wouldn't be using Canon right now, or I would have done, and I would have switched from Sony, because I know I wouldn't have liked the menus or the ergonomics of any Sony camera, because I just don't like the feel of them. I chose ergonomics over specs, and I think definitely in the long run it is the most important factor when you actually are buying a camera, because at the end of the day you're going to be using this camera every single day, so you're going to want to make it like a more comfortable and nice experience when you are using your camera. So that is actually why I didn't buy the Sony, because I just didn't like the ergonomics or menus at all. I did sacrifice specs to go with the Canon EOS R, but it was the best choice I've made, because it got me into the Canon RF world, and now I'm looking to get one of their better cameras in the R6 Mark II, which has 4K 60 uncropped, 4K uncropped anyway. It has really fast frame rates, it has IBIS, it has 2 card slots, and I just love their lenses as well, even though there's no third party lenses at all, which is a little bit of a shame, but I don't mind overall, because their RF lenses that they actually offer at the minute is just too good. Comfort is subjective. You might actually like the feel of the Sony or Nikon over the Canon, and then just go for that system if you do. You won't regret it, because at the end of the day, comfort is the most important. And also, if you do like comfort and also cinema cameras, why not check this video out next to actually see why the Canon C70 is one of the best cinema cameras on the market. And I'll give you a hint. One of the reasons why is because the ergonomics are amazing.